Hey Reddit. Throwaway for obvious, soul-crushing reasons. My name is Mark. At least, that's the name on my driver's license. I'm not sure what my name really is anymore. 45 years old, and as of 3 days ago, I am a resident of the Starlight Motel, off Interstate 80, room 214. I have a duffel bag of clothes, my car, and a profound, ringing emptiness where my personality used to be. My wife, Sarah, thinks I'm on a stress-induced work trip. The truth is, I've escaped. The problem is, I escaped into a void. This won't be a story of dramatic affairs or physical violence. It's a story of something slower, more corrosive, and in many ways, more complete. It's about the death of a man by 1,000 paper cuts, each one administered with a smile, a sigh, or a calm, rational argument. It's about how love can be weaponized into control, and how, for your own good, can become the mantra of your personal jailer. I met Sarah in my senior year at the University of Illinois. I was Mark Evans, a shy but curious computer science major with a head full of dreams about building something meaningful, something that didn't exist yet. I was the kid who spent weekends fixing up a beat-up 1987 Jeep Cherokee, not because it was smart, but because the logic of an engine made sense to me. My friends were a ragtag group, Dave, who wanted to be a documentary filmmaker, Leo, a philosophy grad student who argued about Kant over cheap beer. We felt like the world was ours to figure out. Sarah was different. Sarah Miller was pre-law, organized, sharp. She came from a picture-perfect family in Naperville, a father who was a managing partner, a mother who ran charity galas. To me, a kid from a quiet, emotionally reserved home in Peoria where my dad worked at the Caterpillar plant and my mom passed when I was 12, she was a force of nature. Her certainty was a magnet for my uncertainty. The first signs weren't red flags, they were beige, respectable caution tapes. "Mark, that Jeep is a money pit," she'd say, laughing. "And your friend Leo, he's sweet, but he seems to live in a fantasy world. You don't want to be one of those eternal students, do you?" I'd laugh along. She seemed so adult, so grounded. She cared. She'd cook me dinner when I was up late working on a project. She helped me pick out interview clothes. A purple shirt? Honey, no. Blue. Blue conveys trustworthiness. I proposed 2 years after graduation, down on one knee at her favorite restaurant. She cried, said yes, and her parents threw us a lavish wedding at the country club. My father, rough around the edges and simple, whispered to me during the father-son dance, "She's like polished marble, son. Beautiful, but slip and you'll break every bone." I brushed him off, happy, drunk on the future. We bought a house in the Chicago suburbs. It wasn't the house of my dreams. My dream was a city loft or, at the very least, a place with a big workshop garage. But Sarah didn't. Analysis, the suburbs, DuPage County. Excellent schools, for the future, low crime, stable property values. Your loft, Mark, is a lifestyle purchase, not an asset. Her words always sounded so reasonable, so indisputable. The mortgage was huge, and that's when she made her master move. "Honey," she said one evening, sliding a spreadsheet across the table. "I've done the research. With my salary at the firm and yours at the startup, it's too volatile. One downturn and we lose everything. Global Tech is offering you a position. The salary is 15% lower, but there are stock options, premium health insurance, and most importantly, stability. We can plan a future. You want us to have a future, right?" It was the first major surrender of self. I loved my startup job. We were building something new. At Global Tech, I'd be a cog in a huge, soulless machine. But I looked at her spreadsheet, her confident face, our new home, and agreed. I traded a piece of my soul for premium health insurance. The Jeep was next. It's not safe, it's a gas guzzler, and it makes you look like a teenager. We bought the sensible SUV she picked. Finances became the next frontier. "I'm just better at this, honey. I have a legal mind. Let me manage the budget? It'll take the load off you." It sounded like care. That's how I lost financial agency. I got a debit card linked to our joint account. Any purchase over $100 required discussion. At first, it was big things. Then, everything. "Mark, why did you buy that $85 tool set? You have a screwdriver." "Mark, $60 for dinner with Dave? That's extravagant. You know we're saving for the new kitchen." Friends began to fade from my life not from a fight, but from slow suffocation. Every time I planned to meet them, there was a, but we wanted to watch that series, But you need to rest. But Dave always orders the most expensive thing and never offers to split the bill. Calling them around her became awkward. Gradually, the calls stopped. Then our daughter, Emily, was born. I adored her from the first second. It was a pure, untainted love. And Sarah allowed me to feel it, but not express it the way I wanted. I was the helper. The provider, not the father. Don't spoil her, Mark. Don't hold her so much, you'll create a dependency. Your job is to provide, and I'll provide the proper upbringing. My attempts to establish our own silly rituals, building giant pillow forts in the living room, flying paper airplanes in the kitchen, were shut down with cold efficiency. You're disrupting the routine. She won't sleep later. Our marital bedroom slowly turned into a battleground where I always surrendered without a fight. Intimacy became less frequent, always on her initiative, on her terms. Then came the excuses. Tired, headache. Once, about 8 years into the marriage, feeling incredibly lonely, I tried to hug her, kiss her, just feel a connection. She pulled away with a look of mild, disdainful puzzlement, as if I'd suggested something indecent. Mark, please, we're not teenagers. We have a house, a child, responsibilities. Is that all you can think about? After that, I stopped trying. We became roommates, business partners in the project called Family. And then, after I mishandled, reprimanding Emily for a broken vase, too softly, according to Sarah, she suggested, you toss and turn so much at night. And you snore. Maybe you should move to the study? For your own good, so you sleep better. So I ended up on a pull-out couch in a room that wasn't even truly mine. On the walls, her diplomas. On the shelves, law books I'd never opened. The years from 30 to 40 blurred into one beige smudge. I was a ghost in my own house. My days were a precise algorithm. Wake up at 6:30, shower. Exactly 10 minutes to not waste hot water, breakfast. Yogurt and granola approved by Sarah as healthy. Commute to Global Tech, where I'd held the same senior systems analyst position for 12 years. My job was maintaining legacy systems the company was afraid to touch. No creativity, no growth. I was a digital janitor, and a part of my brain welcomed this predictability. Here, as at home, no ideas were expected of me, only reliable function. Evenings were dedicated to debriefings. Over dinner, Sarah held staff meetings, finances, always in order, thanks to me, Emily's schedule, school, tutors, tennis, piano, all mapped out years in advance, household chores. I had a list. Water the plants, take out the trash, check if the faucet in the guest bathroom is leaking. My initiative was not welcome. Once, I tried to change the bulb in the kitchen chandelier to a warmer one. Sarah came home from work, flipped the switch, and grimaced. What is this yellow light? It looks like a cheap motel. Please change it back, and in the future, let's coordinate things like that. Emily grew up within the framework of maternal micromanagement. She was a smart, beautiful girl, but in her eyes when she looked at me, I often saw not daughterly tenderness, but something like pity and mild embarrassment. Dad, who was always tired from work. Dad, who couldn't make a decision without Mom's approval. We communicated through Sarah's filter. Mom says you can drive me to practice on Saturday? Ask Mom if I can buy you this Lego set? My rare attempts at rebellion were pathetic and instantly suppressed. I bought an old Nikon camera with secretly saved lunch money. I squirreled away $5.10, feeling like a thief. Photography had been my passion in college. I hid it in my desk drawer and sometimes, when no one was home, shot boring views from the window, the fence, the lawn, the mailbox. One day, Sarah, conducting her weekly inventory and cleaning in my study, found it. She didn't yell. She walked into the living room where I was watching football and placed the camera on the coffee table. Her face showed not anger, but deep, weary disappointment, like a teacher catching a favorite student cheating. Mark, explain, what is this? I mumbled something about an old thing, found it at a sale. How much? $50, I lied. $50. $50 that could have gone into Emily's education fund. Or toward the new washing machine that's about to break. You hid this from me. You lied to me. That word, lied, sounded like a verdict. I didn't. What just, Mark? Did you just want to play artist? At 40? You have a daughter, a mortgage, responsibilities. And instead of thinking about your family, you secretly spend money on your childish fantasies. The camera went into the kitchen trash can. Not with anger, but with a gesture of final, irrevocable disposal of an unnecessary, harmful thing. I retrieved it at night. It was intact, but I couldn't touch it anymore. It became a monument to my humiliation. As technology advanced, control became total. All our bank accounts were linked to a shared budgeting app ruled by Sarah. Every transaction of mine, a $4.75 coffee, a gas fill-up, instantly popped up as a notification on her phone. Once, she called me at the office. "Mark, I see a charge at Barnes & Noble for $28. What is that?" It was a book on aviation history. I felt ashamed, as if caught watching porn. Just a book. We have Kindle Unlimited, and the public library is 5 minutes away. That's irresponsible. We had a family Google Calendar where every minute of Sarah and Emily's lives was scheduled. My time was marked in blocks. Mark's work, Mark's presence at dinner, Mark drives Emily to dentist. I was a function, not a person. Her favorite weapon was public humiliation under the guise of concern. At parties with her parents or colleagues, she might say, "Oh, our Mark is such a dreamer. Still talks about his startup sometimes, can you imagine? But he found his calling, maintaining systems nobody else wants to touch. That's important too, right?" And she'd pat my hand affectionately. Everyone would smile, and I'd feel myself shrinking, turning to dust. The worst part was, I started to believe her. I started to believe I was indeed an irresponsible dreamer, incapable of decision-making. That my desires were childish. That stability was the highest good, and sacrificing for it was a sign of maturity. I hated myself for my weakness but hated even more the very thought of conflict, of her icy silence, of that disappointed look that could paralyze me for days. It was easier to comply, easier to disappear. My father, Tom, was 72. He died quietly in his sleep, in his modest house in Peoria. A heart attack. When I got the call from a neighbor, the world didn't shrink for a second, instead, it gaped open. I felt not just grief, but panic of a completely different kind. I was the last to see him alive a month ago. We sat on his back porch, drinking beer. He didn't talk much, we mostly sat in silence, looking at his overgrown garden. Before I left, he put his heavy, rough hand on my shoulder and said, "You look tired, son. Like you haven't slept in years. Everything okay?" "Everything's fine, Dad. Work, house, Emily's growing up." He shook his head, not taking his penetrating eyes off me. "I remember you wanted to build those drones, was it? Or their engines. What happened to that guy?" "He grew up, Dad," I said, and the words sounded like an epitaph. "Grew up," he grumbled. "Yeah, grew up into a different shape. Old friends came to the funeral. Mechanics from the plant, fishing buddies, neighbors." I sat in the front row at the funeral home and listened as they, struggling for words, spoke about him. Not about his career or achievements, but about him. "Remember when Tom decided to restore that old Mustang at 55? Tinkered for a year and a half. We all said it was pointless, but he did it. Roared around the neighborhood in it. And his famous ribs? He took the marinade secret to the grave. Stubborn as a mule, he was. But if you needed help, he was the first there, even if he'd just argued with you a minute before." I looked at the large photograph of my father, gray-haired, wrinkled, with a stubborn, slightly crooked smile, and was overwhelmed by a wave of shame and horror so intense I almost choked. This man lived. He argued, made mistakes, got his hands dirty, did what he wanted, loved the way he knew how. He left behind not just memory, but stories. Funny, stupid, alive. And what would be left of Mark Evans? He was quiet. He never contradicted Sarah. He paid his mortgage on time. I was a human function, and now that the function was nearing its end, the output was nothing but silence. I returned home the day after the funeral, feeling gutted. The house met me with cold order. Sarah was in the kitchen, sorting mail. "Hi," I said, my voice hoarse. "Dad was buried." She glanced at me, nodded. "Yes, I saw on the banking app you withdrew cash for flowers. A nice choice. I spoke with your boss. You have 3 paid days. More, unfortunately, isn't possible. They have a deadline. And Mark, please, don't get depressed. Life goes on. You're needed here. Emily needs help with her biology project tomorrow. I printed the materials, left them on your desk." In that moment, I didn't just see her. I saw the system. I saw a soulless, perfect mechanism I had foolishly mistaken for life. I was an important but replaceable part of that mechanism. My feelings were a glitch that needed to be quickly fixed to avoid disrupting operations. I went up to my study cell, sat on the couch, and stared at the wall. Stared for hours, and something inside me finally broke. Not loudly, but quietly, like a frostbitten branch snapping. It wasn't a decision. It was a realization. The realization that if I stayed here one more day, I would die for real. And no one would even notice because the human function would simply stop functioning, and its place would be taken by something else. Maybe a life insurance payout, maybe a memory. The escape didn't form as a plan but as an instinct for survival of an animal backed into a corner, who suddenly realized the corner was an illusion, and beyond it lay space, even if unknown. There was no plan, only a sharp, animal need for movement. Sarah had left on a 2-day business trip to St. Louis. I was alone in the impeccable silence of our institution home. My escape began with perhaps the strangest thing. I walked into the living room and turned off the thermostat. Sarah always set it to 72 degrees Fahrenheit, the ideal temperature for comfort and economy. I turned the dial all the way down. Then I went to the bookcase and took out one of her numerous corporate law books. I placed it spine in. A petty, childish act of defiance. My heart was pounding like a jackhammer. I didn't pack suitcases. That would raise suspicion if Sarah returned early. I took my old weekend hiking backpack from college, miraculously surviving on the top shelf of the closet. Into it, I packed my laptop, company issued from Global Tech. Chargers. Passport, social security card, birth certificate, kept in a safe, the code to which I, of course, knew. A small box hidden under the lining of my desk drawer. In it, $1,437 in cash. The fruit of 3 years of secretly skimping on lunches, eating homemade sandwiches, and cashback refunds from my hidden credit card, which I had applied for at work 3 years ago for travel expenses. I made minimum payments on it from the same cash. It was my only financial secret and my only freedom. A few old photographs. Me with my father by that very Mustang. Me and my friends hiking in Colorado. Emily at 2 years old, laughing on my shoulders. Sarah was cropped out of this photo. A change of underwear, a couple of t-shirts, a sweater. That same Nikon camera. I walked through the house one last time. Peeked into Emily's room. She was at summer camp. Her world was as clean, orderly, and impersonal as the whole house. Stuffed animals sat on the shelf by height. Textbooks were neatly stacked. An incredible pain gripped me. I wrote on a notepad page, "Emily, I love you more than anything in the world." "Dad," I slipped it under her pillow. Then changed my mind, took it back, and tore it up. I couldn't give Sarah such a weapon. I got into our sensible SUV, a silver 2018 Toyota Highlander. Turned on the GPS. Typed in motels. Picked the first one that popped up 30 miles towards Indiana, Starlight Motel. Price per night, $59.99. I drove. The feeling didn't leave me that I was committing a crime. That sirens would wail any moment and stop me for stealing myself. The Starlight Motel was the embodiment of melancholy. A single-story L-shaped building the color of faded ochre, a gravel parking lot, a neon sign missing the letter S. The office smelled of old carpet and cigarette smoke. The elderly man at the desk, without looking at me, handed over a key, a real, metal one on a bulky plastic tag. Room 214. The door creaked. Inside, everything like in the movies. Brown-orange carpet, a worn bedspread on a double bed, a CRT television, a mini fridge humming loudly. And silence. Not the oppressive, domestic kind, but an empty, resonant one. I sat on the edge of the bed. My hands were shaking. I did something I hadn't done in years. I cried. Not sobbing, but quietly, with dry, ragged hiccups, as if my body had forgotten how. I cried for my father. For myself. For 20 years that had turned to dust. I cried from fear. The fear was varied. Acute, paralyzing fear of Sarah. What would she say? What would she do? How would she manipulate Emily? A duller, existential fear. What to do next? I didn't know how to decide. I didn't know how to rent an apartment. How to open a bank account in my own name. How to simply be without a schedule, without approval, without a to-do list. The first practical thought was, I need to notify work. I emailed my manager, Brian, from my phone. Brian, family emergency. Need to take a week of personal time. Will be reachable. A reply came almost instantly. Of course, Mark. Everything okay? Sarah already called, asking if you could take paid leave. We sorted it out. Take care. The blood drained from my face. She already called. She had already taken control of the narrative. I imagined her call. Hello, this is Sarah Evans, Mark's wife. We have a small family crisis. He needs some time to collect himself. Yes, he's very upset. Can we arrange this as leave? Thank you for understanding. She was painting me as weak, incapable, upset. And everyone would believe it. Because it looked like the truth. I turned off my phone. The world shrank to 4 motel walls. The first morning didn't start at 6:30. I woke up at 8:17 to the hum of the fridge. The first feeling, panic. I'm late. Then memory returned. I lay there, staring at the water-stained ceiling, listening to someone coughing behind the wall. I needed to eat. Breakfast used to just appear. Now, a decision was required. I was terrified of this decision. I got my phone, found the nearest diner. Walked there. Sit at the counter or in a booth. The waitress, a tired woman in her 50s, approached with, "Coffee?" I nodded. She brought it. I stared at the menu. Omelette? Pancakes? Waffles? Every choice felt monumental. I felt her gaze on me. "I'll have the bacon omelette," I finally forced out. "What kind of bread? White, rye, toast?" I froze. My brain locked up. "White," I whispered at random. When the food came, I ate slowly, mechanically, not tasting it. Paid in cash. Left a 15% tip. Sarah always said 15% was adequate for average service. Then caught myself thinking that and added another $5. Just because I could. I spent the whole day wandering the area. I went into a Walmart. Just walked the aisles, touched things, watched people. I had $1,437 of freedom, but I couldn't bring myself to buy even a new pair of socks. Because, what if they're poor quality? Because, do I really need them? Sarah's voice echoed in my head. That evening, I sat with a notepad I bought at the pharmacy. Tried to make a list. What to do? I stopped at number 5. Each of these actions was a universe of unknowns, full of potential mistakes. I closed the notepad. On the third day, I turned on my phone. Notifications flooded in immediately. Missed calls. Sarah, 12, unknown number, likely her parents, a colleague. Texts from Sarah, chronologically. Mark, where are you? Brian said you didn't come to work. I think you need a break, but let me know where you are. Day 1, this is irresponsible. Emily is worried. Call us. Day 1, evening. I understand you're upset about your father. But you can't just disappear. We have responsibilities. Come home, and we'll talk it through like adults. Day 2. Mark, I'm starting to get seriously concerned. If I don't hear from you by tomorrow, I'll have to file a missing person report. You don't want a scandal, do you? Day 3, morning. And the last one, an hour ago. Honey, I'm worried. I was probably too harsh. Just come home. We'll forgive and forget. Emily is crying. You need help. Come back, and I'll sort everything out. Like always. The phrase, "I'll sort everything out," like always, made me shudder. It wasn't a request or a plea. It was a reminder of my role. Helpless. The one for whom everything needs to be sorted out. It was a hook baited with care and manipulation. And a part of me, a large, accustomed part, desperately wanted to bite. To call. Say, "Yes, I'm at a motel. I don't know what to do. Help." And hear her calm, authoritative voice. "All right. Stay put. I'm on my way. I'll give you money for the room. We'll go home, and everything will be as it was." As it was. The quiet horror. Predictable oblivion. My fingers reached to dial. But I was looking at the dirty window of room 214, at my reflection. The gaunt face, sunken eyes of a stranger. And for the first time in many years, I didn't just feel fear. I felt anger. A quiet, cold, white-hot ball in my chest. Anger at her. At myself. At 20 years of silence. This anger was scarier than fear, but it was mine. I didn't call her. Instead, I looked up the number of a family law attorney in a neighboring town who specialized in cases involving psychological abuse. I dialed. My fingers trembled. The line rang. "Hello, Law Office of David Clark," answered a female voice. I took a deep breath. My own voice sounded hoarse, foreign, but firmer than I expected. "Hello, my name is Mark Evans. I need a consultation. I just left my wife after 20 years of marriage." And I need help. I think I was in an emotionally abusive relationship. Saying it out loud, I felt something shift inside. Not relief. Rather, the first step into dark, unknown waters. This wasn't a cry for help to the jailer. It was a request for help to a guide to freedom. Even if that guide was just a voice on the phone. I scheduled an appointment for the day after tomorrow. Put the phone down. It was 4:17 p.m. Suddenly, I felt hungry. A real, animal hunger, not the need to eat on schedule. I put my jacket back on, left the room. The air was cold, fresh. I walked to the same diner. The same waitress. You again? She asked without much interest. Yes, I said, and added. This time, I'll have the cheeseburger. Double patty. And fries. And a beer. Whatever's on tap. She raised an eyebrow in surprise, nodded. White bun? I looked her in the eye. No, brioche. If you have it, we do. While waiting, I took out that same Nikon camera. Brushed off invisible dust. Raised it and took a picture of the empty napkin holder on the table. Just because I could. The cheeseburger was too greasy, the beer too bitter. And it was amazing, because it was my greasy burger and my bitter beer. My first, timid, ridiculous choice in a new, frightening, and infinitely vast life that finally belonged only to me. I paid for it with my secretly saved money. And when I left the diner into the gathering twilight, I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. I didn't know how I would talk to Emily. I didn't know if I'd win anything in court. I didn't know who I would become. But for the first time in 20 years, I knew one thing for sure. There was no way back. And in that terrifying knowledge lay a tiny, fragile sprout of something that very distantly resembled hope. Or perhaps just the smell of freedom, bitter and unfamiliar, like a dark beer in a rundown diner by the highway.